Bob was paying $1,000 a month in power bills. He'd spoken to 4 different solar companies. Every single one of them gave him confusion, jargon, unrealistic promises and zero straight answers. Then he called us. I'm Peter from Oz Energy. We've installed thousands of systems over 16 years in business, and today I'm walking you through the exact system we designed for Bob, the real numbers from his account and how he's now saving over $6,000 every 6 months with a payback period under 4 years. The first thing I want to cover is a $1,000 a month problem. That's more common than you think. Bob's a very businessman here on the Sunshine Coast, and he had a massive problem. His power bill was $1,000 every single month. That's $12,000 a year just to keep the lights on. For a family home, that's an extraordinary amount of money, and it was putting real pressure on his household budget. He knew he needed to do something about it, so he did what most people do. He started calling solar companies. He got 4 different companies out to his property to give him a quote, and he quickly realised that most of them had no idea what they were talking about. They were making promises about the savings that didn't add up when he looked at the numbers. They were trying to sell him systems that clearly hadn't been designed for his specific property or his specific usage. He told me later that he thought they were all idiots, and honestly, based on what he described, I don't blame him. When I went out to see him, I did what I always do. I looked at his bills, I looked at the property, I asked him about his usage patterns, and I told him directly what he needed and why. He said it was the first time any solar company had actually given him a straight answer. He was a busy guy, so he sat on the quote for 3 or 4 months, but eventually the bills got too much. And he called back. He said, "Pete, we want to go ahead. You knew what you were talking about. You told us what we needed. Let's do it." Why the other solar companies got it wrong? I want to spend a moment on this because it's important. Bob had 4 quotes before he called us, and not one of them was right for his situation. The problem is that a lot of the solar companies are essentially sales operations. They have a standard package, maybe 2 or 3 options, and they try to fit every customer into one of those packages, regardless of whether it's actually the right fit. They're optimising for margin and speed, not for the customer's outcome. Bob's property wasn't a standard suburban home with a single roof and a predictable usage pattern. It was a more complex setup involving multiple dwellings. The power usage was spread across different parts of the property in different ways. A standard 10 to 13 kilowatt system was never going to make a meaningful dent in a $1,000 monthly bill. The companies that came out before us either didn't understand the complexity of the property, or they understood it and decided to quote a standard system anyway because it was easier to sell. Neither approach was going to solve Bob's problem. If you're watching this and you've got large power bills that you can't seem to get on top of, that's exactly the kind of situation we specialise in at Oz Energy. We don't do cookie cutter systems. We look at your property, your usage, your goals, and we design something that actually solves a problem. We're based on the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast and Fraser Coast, and we do all our own installations with our own qualified electricians. If you want a proper assessment, book a free solar assessment. Next, we're going to talk about designing the right system for the job. Because Bob's usage was so high and the property was complex, we had to go big and we had to be precise. We designed a system built around a 30 kilowatt inverter. That's a commercial grade inverter on a residential property, and it was necessary to the scale of the power draw. To feed the inverter, we installed 72 solar panels, each rated at 475 watts. That's a total panel capacity of just over 34 kilowatts. Because Bob was on acreage, he had some shading. So we have 2 different types of solar panels we use. We have top connection like this one here, or we have all black contact. So on Bob's property, we used all black contact. I know people don't really want to get into the technical side of it, and Bob didn't care or understand, but that's what we put in for him anyway. And to make sure all that solar generation could be used at night as well, we installed a 48 kilowatt hour battery system. Every component was from one of the major reputable brands we work with, publicly listed companies with a long-term presence in Australia, backed by reputable wholesalers. Not the cheapest option on the market, but the right option for the job. This is what custom design looks like. A salesman would have tried to sell Bob whatever system they had in their warehouse, and installers who understand the technology. As installers who understand the technology, we looked at his actual situation and built an energy plan on his roof that was sized to actually solve his problem. What the numbers look like today. A few months after we installed the system, Bob sent me a text that goes, "Pete, you're amazing. Here's me last bill's $1,000. Now I'm paying $100. Here's what it gets really interesting, because I want to address something that a lot of people are worried about right now. Bob bought his system last year, just before the government reduced the home battery rebates. He got a good price at the time. But I ran the numbers recently on Bob's exact system configuration using today's pricing. Even though the government rebate for a 48 kilowatt battery has been reduced significantly, the wholesale price of batteries has dropped by a similar amount over the same period. The total out-of-pocket cost for the exact same system today is almost identical to what Bob paid. So if you're sitting there thinking you missed the golden era of solar and batteries, you haven't. The technology is now better now than it was when we installed Bob's system, and the cost is the same. Don't let anyone tell you the window is closed. Now let's look at the data, the real data. A lot of solar companies promise savings. We actually track them because we install quality gear from reputable brands. We can log into the monitoring portal and see exactly how every system we've installed is performing. I logged into Bob's systems on the 15th of June this year. So this is the real data for less than 6 months of operation. In that time, his solar panels produced 16.13 megawatt hours of electricity. That's 16,000 kilowatt hours. Of that, he used 10.84 megawatt hours directly from the solar panels to power his home during the day at an average grid rate of 35 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a direct savings of $3,794. He also used 5.74 megawatt hours directly from his battery to power his home at night. That's an additional saving of $2,009. He exported 5.8 megawatt hours back to the grid, even at a low feed-in tariff. That's an additional credit on his bill. And the direct solar savings and the battery savings together, and Bob saved $5,803 plus GST in less than 6 months. That's over $6,300 real money that stayed in Bob's bank account instead of going to the energy company. The final ROI and what it means. Let's put that into perspective. Bob's bill went from $1,000 a month to around $100. He sent me a text message after this very first bill. He said, "Thanks, Pete. Our bill was $1,000 a month. Last month it was $100." He saved $900 that month, but for the average in the last 6 months, he saved over $6,000. That's $12,000 a year in savings on a system that cost him a good price at the time. His payback period, based on the actual saving data I pulled from his system, is somewhere between 3 and 4 years. After that payback period, the system is essentially generating free electricity for the remaining 20 plus years of its life. The long-term return on investment is extraordinary. And Bob's been so happy with the result, he's referred several of his family members and colleagues to us. What this actually means for anyone watching with a big power bill. I want to speak directly to anyone watching this who's in a similar situation to Bob. Maybe your bill isn't $1,000 a month, maybe it's $400 or even $600 or $800. The principle is exactly the same. The reason Bob's result was so dramatic is that the system was designed specifically for his usage, not a generic package. Not the cheapest option that would technically fit on his roof, a system engineered around his actual power draw, his property layout and his goal of eliminating the bill. That's what we do at Oz Energy. We're not a sales company with a catalogue of packages. We're electricians and installers who understand the technology and design the system that actually solves the problem. If you've been getting quotes and the numbers don't seem to add up, or the companies aren't giving you straight answers, that's a sign they're talking to the wrong people. The right installer will ask you detailed questions about usage, look at your bills and give you a realistic projection that they're prepared to stand behind. And critically, they still be around in 3 years to service the system and make sure it's performing. Bob can ring us anytime. We can log into his system remotely, see exactly what's doing, and if something needs attention, we'll send someone out. That's ongoing relationship is part of what makes the investment work over the long term. The solar industry is full of companies that are great at selling and terrible at servicing. The best thing you can do is find a company that treats the installation as the beginning of a relationship, not at the end of a transaction. That's what a properly designed, expertly installed solar and battery system can do for a household with a serious power bill problem. It doesn't just reduce the bill, it eliminates the financial stress of unpredictable energy costs, it generates a measurable return on investment, and it pays for itself in just a few years. Bob's story isn't unusual. We see results like this regularly. The difference is always the same. A system designed properly for the specific property, installed by people who know what they're doing, and backed by a company that'll still be there when you need them. If you've got a large power bill and you're tired of getting confusing quotes from companies that don't really understand your situation, call Oz Energy and get your free solar assessment. We'll come out, look at your property properly, design a system that actually solves the problem. No jargon, no inflated promises. Just honest advice and quality work. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.